Welcome back, everyone. Good to see you all. It is Wilderness Medicine Wednesday. This is wilderness medicine, but it's also front country medicine. I want to talk about plantar fasciitis, which I got after my face surgery when I was just starting to get back to running. Plantar fasciitis can be super debilitating. It can last for a long time. I've read about people where it is an issue for years. I beat it in 6 weeks, really closer to 5 weeks, and I want to talk about how I did it. Let's go. Okay, for starters, plantar fasciitis. Itis means inflammation of the plantar fascia. The plantar fascia is a ligament that wraps around the heel and goes to the middle of the underside of your foot, and it gives a lot of your foot structure. So essentially, I had a painful, swollen, inflamed plantar fascia. I know exactly how I did it. I know exactly when I did it. I went for a run early in the morning. It was very cold. I didn't warm up. I felt it like that. It just came on. I probably, if not just inflamed it, did a slight tear or something like that. I didn't think much about it. I decided I would rest for a couple days, went for a run, and it was bad. I realized then that I was like, okay, this is not just a strain. This is full-on plantar fasciitis. I need to start figuring out how to deal with this. So I did some research online. There was nothing definitive. I talked to a couple friends who are runners. One of them, a guy that I teach with all the time, gave me lots of advice. Then I reached out to someone that I only worked with once, but who is a professional ultra runner. And I asked her, what do you know about it? What should I do? She sent me a paper that a friend of hers had written, an MD who was a runner had written. And essentially what it said was, there is no one way to alleviate this. It gave me a lot of really good suggestions, but there's no one pill, no pun intended. And so I want to talk about the things that I did that worked really well for me. So let's go through those one at a time. Now, this is where I need to say I am not an MD, I am not a kinesiologist, I am not a physical therapist, I am not an occupational therapist. I am a former paramedic with a good understanding of anatomy and physiology. Don't do what I do. Take this with a grain of salt. This worked for me. I hope some of it works for you. Okay, there's my disclaimer. Let's get to it. The first thing that I did was I replaced my running shoes. They were not completely dead, but I didn't want to take any risks. So I replaced my running shoes and I bought new footbed inserts. So I am a big fan of Superfeet, which is a brand of footbed insert. And I historically have them in my hiking boots. I decided to put them in the shoe that I wore every day. This is going to then give a little bit of a lift, a little bit of a pressure directly to that plantar fascia. The problem with the plantar fascia in terms of healing is that your feet don't get a lot of blood flow. Blood flow, like swelling, is how your body heals something. It rushes all the things that are needed to repair whatever the injury is. That's why we have swelling, which is why we no longer RICE wounds. RICE is an acronym which stands for Rest, Ice, Compression, Elevation. The doctor that invented RICE now says don't do it because it dramatically slows the rate of healing. Now what they talk about is gentle use, light exercise to help things like this heal. So my goal was stretch it out, work it out gently, and keep good blood flow. Now, the guy that I teach with a lot, who is a runner, suggested compression socks. This is one that I didn't try, but I would try. If this had continued longer, I would have gotten myself compression socks. I did sleep with socks on so that my feet were warm. Warm feet means there's good blood flow. I massaged that underside of my foot, like whenever I wasn't doing something, if I'm sitting down someplace with my shoes off, I was massaging that portion of my foot. I did, and I really think that particularly in the beginning, this helped a lot. I soaked my foot in warm water and at the same time stretched out my toes and my calf. And so I filled my Yeti bucket with hot water, warm to hot. Don't burn yourself, but I wanted to make sure it was warm, and then just pressed my toes against the side of the bucket. And this helped stretch everything out. And I really used pain as my guide. Like doing stretches and massages would hurt a little bit. I would feel it, but it was not painful, if you can understand that distinction. That worked really well for me. Several times a day, I would I would take time to like remove my shoes and stretch my calf in a number of different ways that I knew were affecting that part of my foot. So I did a stretch sort of like the yoga pose chair, and I did another one leaning up against a wall that had 2 positions, and I'll insert video of that right here. And those I actually also did in the shower where my foot was in warm water and it was nice and warm and loose. It got to the point where those stretches towards the 4th week or so, I was not feeling any pain, which is an indicator to me that my plantar fasciitis was in fact healing. I also did exercises for everything below the knee, right? So I was doing calf raises and calf drops. So I would stand on something elevated and lower my heels below that height of my toes just to get a good stretch. I did those 3 or 4 times a day. All of these things were with the goal of stretching and exercising what was there while also keeping good blood flow. The other thing I did was twice a day, I would do over-the-counter pain meds just to help ease the pain in there so that I could continue to stretch it. I would also take it at night because it did make it a little bit easier for me to sleep. A lot of people recommend splinting your feet at night. I didn't do that because several people that I knew told me it was super uncomfortable and I couldn't sleep. But what I did was every night in bed, I would be like watching a show or something, and I would be flexing my calf, flexing my foot, flexing my ankle, just to keep blood flow going. And then, as I said, that would keep my foot warm with a nice wool sock on, and then I would get under a warm cover, which would keep my foot warm. And that was really the key, was keeping my foot warm. Another thing that I did was whenever I was standing at my standing desk, I would pop my shoe off and work out that section of my foot with a hard ball. This is a lacrosse ball. I actually have steel meditation balls that I use for a lot of it, really hard. I can't find them. I don't know what the heck I did with them. But in any case, a lacrosse ball works really well. A tennis ball would work. A lime would work, something like that, just to work out that specific part of my foot. Now, I need to stress, I can't guarantee this is going to work for you. This is what worked for me. And here's the proof. Just completed my first run back after 5 weeks of plantar fasciitis. And it was like I felt that there was something not quite right, but it didn't feel bad. Like I had bigger aches and pains other places in my body from not running for 5 weeks. So I would call that a success. Super happy. Got to keep running. Got to keep stretching it out and keeping it warm and all the things that I've been doing. This is a chair that I just saw on the side of the road and decided to sit in it to shoot this, and now my butt's wet. Just finished my 3rd run of 2025. The plantar fasciitis is done, is dealt with, is no pain, 0 pain. Not even like discomfort, nothing. Feels great. So this occurred the week before, like leading up to Thanksgiving, and I decided that I would tentatively try a run on January 1st. So that was really 5 weeks, 5.5 weeks. New shoes, new super feet in the shoes, and I did a tentative run. But what I did, and I'm still doing, was I did a lot of warm up to really make sure that my foot was loose before I started stressing it with a run. So I literally walked a half a mile relatively briskly just to get everything loose and blood flowing. Then I ran a mile, then I walked a half a mile. And I'm still doing that pattern. A mile-long run is not very far, and I don't run very fast, but it's important to me to be running. My runs will obviously get longer. Today's run was 1.5 miles, and I shortened my warm-up. I made it about a 1/4 mile walk to warm up and about a 1/4 mile walk to cool down afterwards. So I'm doing a lot of that. I'm still doing all the stretching. I'm still working the lacrosse ball under my foot. Things like that are still important. I don't consider this cured, even though I am now running completely free of pain. Ironically, I injured my right plantar fascia. My left ankle is now hurting. I have no idea what I did there. I think that's just part of 58 and being active is something's always going to hurt. So this is what I did. I hope you find it helpful. Be careful. Take your time. 5 weeks for this sort of injury or 6 weeks for this sort of injury is not very long. I feel very fortunate that I managed to solve this, which is why I really wanted to share how I solved this. Okay, do me a favor, hit like and subscribe. There's a lot more coming. I'll see you outside. Saltwater.
I got a bottle of 303 and a rag. If you want to clean off any of your gasket.
Okay. GoPro, stop recording.